I want to start with the photograph because that is where everything started for me. And because I think if I do not start there, I will start somewhere else and lose the thread of the thing that matters most, which is not the ending, though the ending is something, but the specific Tuesday in November when a stranger decided that I deserved to know the truth about my own life. The photograph arrived in my Instagram direct messages at 11:47 in the morning. I know the exact time because I was sitting in my car in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's in Scottsdale, Arizona, eating a granola bar between errands, and I had opened Instagram to pass the time while I finished it. The account that sent it had no profile picture, no posts, no followers, no following. The username was a random string of letters and numbers, the kind of account that is created for one purpose and then abandoned. The message contained no text, just the photograph. I almost did not open it. I almost swiped it away the way I swipe away most messages from accounts I do not recognize, with the automatic reflex of someone who has learned that unsolicited messages from strangers rarely contain anything worth looking at. But something made me stop. Some instinct I cannot fully explain. The same instinct that makes you slow down before a bend in the road for no reason you can articulate, and then find that there was something around the bend after all. I opened the photograph. It was a wedding. An outdoor ceremony, late afternoon light, the kind of golden hour light that photographers specifically request and that makes everything look like a memory even while it is still happening. There were white chairs arranged in rows on a green lawn, and flowers on tall stands framing an archway, and guests in formal clothes turning in their seats to watch the aisle. And at the end of the aisle, standing at the altar with his back partially turned toward the camera, wearing a charcoal gray suit that I had never seen before, was my husband. His name is Thomas. We had been married for 11 years. He was 44 years old. He sold commercial real estate in the Phoenix metropolitan area, and he was good at it. The kind of good that is built on the specific combination of intelligence and personal warmth that makes people trust you with large decisions. He was tall and broad-shouldered with dark hair that had started going silver at the temples in the past 2 years in a way that I had always found attractive. He coached our daughter Lily's soccer team on Saturday mornings. He made pancakes on Sunday. He had never, in 11 years, given me a single concrete reason to doubt him. The man standing at the altar in the photograph was unmistakably Thomas. I sat in the parking lot of a Trader Joe's, and I looked at the photograph for a long time. I looked at it the way you look at something that your brain is telling you cannot be what you are seeing. The way you look at an optical illusion and try to force it into a shape that makes sense. I enlarged it with 2 fingers. I looked at the back of his head, the particular way his hair was cut close on the sides, a style he had been wearing for 3 years. I looked at his shoulders, the way he held them slightly back, a posture I had noticed on our first date and that had not changed in 11 years. I looked at his hands, clasped loosely in front of him, and I looked at the left one specifically, at the finger where his wedding ring should have been, which was bare. I put my phone face down on the passenger seat. I picked it back up. I looked at the photograph again. I put it face down again. I sat in that parking lot for 23 minutes. I know because I looked at the clock when I finally started the car, and I counted back to when I had opened Instagram, and it was 23 minutes. In 23 minutes, I did not eat the rest of my granola bar, and I did not go into Trader Joe's, and I did not call anyone. I sat in a car in a parking lot in Scottsdale, Arizona, on a Tuesday in November, and I tried to find the version of this that was not what it looked like. There was no other version. My name is Claire. I was 41 years old when this happened. We lived in a neighborhood called Arcadia in East Phoenix, in a house with a pool and a lemon tree in the backyard, and a neighborhood full of families with children the same age as our daughter, who was 8 years old and named Lily, and who was, at that particular Tuesday moment, in the 3rd grade at a school 4 miles from the Trader Joe's parking lot, where her mother was sitting in a car trying to understand what she was looking at. Thomas and I had met at a work event in our late 20s, the kind of gathering where nobody wants to be there, and the conversation is bad, and you end up talking to one person for the entire evening, because they are the only one in the room who seems to find the situation as absurd as you do. He had been that person. He had made me laugh 3 times in the first 10 minutes, and by the end of the evening I had given him my number without him asking for it, which was not something I had ever done before. We dated for 2 years, got engaged, got married in a ceremony in Sedona with 60 of the people we loved most, and built a life in Phoenix that I had always considered proof that the thing people said about finding your person was real and not just something people said. 11 years. I want you to hold that number. Not because it is unusually long, though it is not short either, but because of what it means in terms of shared life. 11 years of dinners and vacations and ordinary Tuesday mornings, and the particular intimacy of knowing someone's habits so completely that their absence has a specific shape. 11 years of Lily, from the beginning to the 8-year-old girl who was currently in the 3rd grade, learning long division and soccer formations and the names of all the bones in the human hand from a children's anatomy book, she had become inexplicably obsessed with. Thomas and I were, as far as I knew, happy. I want to be precise about this because I think precision matters in a story like this. We were not ecstatically happy, the way people are in the first year of a relationship when everything is still discovery. We were quietly, sustainably happy, the kind of happy that does not announce itself but that you notice in its absence. The way you notice silence when a sound you had stopped hearing suddenly stops. We did not fight often. We laughed regularly. We had a functioning, affectionate marriage that I had never once thought to question. I drove home from the parking lot without going into Trader Joe's. I sat in my own driveway for another 10 minutes. Then I went inside and I made myself a cup of tea, and I sat at the kitchen table and I opened Instagram again and I looked at the photograph again. And this time I looked at it differently. I looked at the woman. She was standing beside Thomas at the altar, partially visible at the edge of the frame, as though the camera had been positioned to capture the guests rather than the couple, and had caught the ceremony only incidentally. She was wearing white. She was younger than me, I thought, though it was difficult to be certain given the angle and the distance. She was holding a small bouquet. She was looking at Thomas. She was marrying my husband. I put my phone down on the table, and I pressed both hands flat on the wood surface, and I breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth, the way my therapist had taught me years ago during a period of anxiety that had nothing to do with anything that was happening now, and that felt, in retrospect, like extraordinarily useful training for a situation I had not known I was going to need training for. Then I thought about what I actually knew. I knew the photograph existed. I knew the man in it was Thomas. I did not know when it was taken. I did not know where. I did not know who had sent it or why. I did not know if the ceremony in the photograph was legal or symbolic or something else entirely. I did not know if Thomas knew the photograph had been sent to me. I did not know anything beyond the image itself, and I had learned enough in 41 years to understand that an image without context is a beginning and not an end. I picked up my phone and I looked at the photograph one more time, carefully this time, looking for every detail I had not yet absorbed. The flowers were roses and something else I could not identify, cream-colored, arranged in tall stands on either side of the archway. The chairs were white with ribbon tied in bows on the backs. The lawn was immaculate and very green, which in Arizona in November meant either artificial turf or a significant irrigation budget. The guests, from what I could see of the ones not turned toward the aisle, were dressed formally, the men in suits, the women in dresses. The light was late afternoon. I thought around 4 or 5 o'clock based on the angle of the shadows. There was one more detail. In the lower left corner of the photograph, slightly out of focus but legible if you enlarged it, was a small standing sign of the kind that wedding venues use to direct guests. I could not read the full text, but I could read 2 words, Kierland Estate. Kierland Estate is a wedding venue in North Scottsdale. I know this because a colleague of mine had her daughter's wedding there 2 years ago, and I had attended and commented on how beautiful the grounds were. It was 11 minutes from our house. My husband had gotten married 11 minutes from our house. I put the phone in my bag, I went upstairs, I got into the shower, which I know is a thing that people do in stories like this, because a shower is the place where you can make whatever sound you need to make. And nobody hears it, and the hot water does something to the panic that nothing else does in the same way. I stood in there for a long time. Then I turned the water off, and I stood in the steam, and I thought about what kind of person does something like this, and whether I had ever known that person at all, or whether the Thomas I had married was a version of someone that had been constructed specifically for me, a performance so complete and so consistent that not once in 11 years had the mask slipped enough for me to see what was behind it. Then I got dressed and drove to pick up Lily from school, because whatever was true, whatever was happening, my daughter needed to be picked up at 3:15, and I was the one who picked her up. And some things do not stop being true because other things have turned out to be false. Lily got in the car and said, "Mom, can we stop for a smoothie?" And I said, "Yes, baby, of course." And we stopped for smoothies. And she talked the entire way home about a girl in her class named Priya, who had brought a lizard to school in her backpack. And I listened and I asked questions and I laughed in the right places. And I drove us home and I helped her with her homework and I started making dinner. Thomas came home at 6:15. He came through the door the way he always came through the door, jacket over his arm, phone in his hand, saying something over his shoulder to someone he had been on a call with as he crossed the threshold. He ended the call, dropped his jacket on the bench in the hallway, looked up and saw me standing in the kitchen doorway, and smiled the way he always smiled when he came home, the particular warm and easy smile of a man who was happy to be where he was. I smiled back. I said, "How was your day?" He said, "Long, good, busy." He said something about a deal that had been moving slowly and was finally moving. He went to the refrigerator and got a beer and leaned against the counter and talked to me about his day, and I stood there and I made the right sounds and I looked at his face, which I knew better than any face in the world, and I tried to find in it the person who had stood at an altar 11 minutes from our house in a charcoal gray suit with no wedding ring and promised himself to someone else. I could not find it. That was the thing that frightened me most. Not the photograph, not the implications of the photograph, but the fact that I was standing in my own kitchen, looking at a man I had shared a bed with for 11 years, and I could not find any trace of what he had done. His face was exactly the face I knew. His voice was exactly the voice I knew. He was, as far as every instrument I possessed could detect, completely himself. I said, "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. He said, "Great, I am going to change." He went upstairs. I heard his footsteps on the ceiling above me. I heard the closet door open and close. I heard the sound of water running in the bathroom. I stood at the stove and I thought about what I was going to do. I had 3 options as I understood them. I could confront him that night, across the dinner table, in front of our daughter. I could wait and confront him later, when Lily was in bed, without the photograph on the table, and without any additional information, and with only his denial, which I was certain would be articulate and convincing. Or I could say nothing. I could find out more first. I could be the kind of person who does not speak until they know what they are saying and why. I had not spent 11 years married to a man who sold commercial real estate to major clients without learning something about the value of knowing your position before you show your hand. I said nothing. Thomas came back downstairs. We ate dinner. Lily told him about the lizard in the backpack, and he was appropriately appalled and entertained. He helped clear the table. He put Lily to bed, which was his job on weekday evenings, reading to her from the chapter book they were working through together, a story about a girl who discovers she has the ability to communicate with birds. I could hear his voice through the ceiling, low and steady, doing the different character voices that Lily required, and I sat downstairs and I listened to the sound of my husband reading to our daughter, and I thought about what it meant to love someone and lie to them with equal completeness. At 9:30, after Lily was asleep, Thomas came downstairs, and we watched television for an hour the way we usually did, sitting on the couch with a reasonable distance between us and the television on low, because Lily was a light sleeper. At 10:30, he said he was going to bed, and I said I would be up in a few minutes, and he said okay and kissed me on the top of my head, the way he always did, and went upstairs. I sat on the couch alone for a long time. Then I got out my phone, and I started to look for Kierland Estate on social media. Wedding venues are photographed constantly, and the photographs end up everywhere, in the venue's own accounts, in the accounts of wedding photographers, in the personal accounts of guests who want to share the day. I found Kierland Estate's Instagram account and I scrolled through it methodically, looking at every post from the past 6 months. November, October, September, outdoor ceremonies with late afternoon light, roses and cream-colored flowers in tall arrangements, white chairs with ribbons. I found it on a Saturday in October, a post from Kierland Estate's account showing the grounds set up for an event, captioned with a quotation about new beginnings and tagged with the handle of a wedding photography studio called Golden Hour Portraits. I went to Golden Hour Portraits. I scrolled. I found the wedding. They had posted a full gallery, 47 photographs. Outdoor ceremony, late afternoon, October 15th. White chairs, ribbon bows, roses, and cream flowers. And there, in photograph number 6, from the same angle as the photograph the stranger had sent me, was Thomas. But this time the camera was facing the altar rather than the guests, and I could see the full picture. The woman in white was standing beside him. She was perhaps 32 or 33 years old. Dark hair, small frame. A face that was pretty in the way that young faces are often pretty, before they have been through enough to make them interesting. She was looking at Thomas the way people look at each other at altars, when they believe in what they are doing. She was holding his hand, and Thomas was looking back at her with an expression I recognized. It was the expression he had used on me. The warm, unhurried, fully present expression that had made me give him my phone number without being asked on the night we met. The expression that said, "I am here, and I see you, and there is nowhere else I would rather be." He was giving it to her. I sat on the couch in my living room at 11:30 at night, and I scrolled through 47 wedding photographs of my husband marrying another woman, and I did not make a sound. The photographer had tagged the couple in several of the captions. The woman's name was Lauren. Her account was public. I found it in 30 seconds. Lauren had posted about her engagement 9 months ago. She had posted photographs of her venue tour 4 months ago. She had posted a countdown 6 weeks ago. She had posted wedding photographs 3 weeks ago, a selection of the same gallery I had just found, captioned with the words "the beginning of everything" and a date. October 15th. October 15th was a Saturday. I scrolled back through my own memory of that day. Thomas had told me he was going to Las Vegas for a real estate conference. He had packed a bag on Friday evening and kissed me and Lily goodbye Saturday morning and driven to the airport and sent me a text from his gate that said, "Wish you were here, miss you already." Back Sunday, he had come home Sunday evening with a conference lanyard around his neck and a Toblerone for Lily from the airport gift shop, which is the kind of specific detail that a person remembers only in retrospect, only after they understand what it was meant to do, which was to be exactly as ordinary as every other Sunday evening return from every other trip, to be so normal that there was not a single thing to notice or remember. I sat with all of this for a long time. Then I went to Lauren's profile and I scrolled back further, back to before the wedding, back through the engagement, back through the months of a relationship that had been conducted openly enough for photographs on a public Instagram account, photographs of restaurants and weekend trips, and a woman smiling beside a man whose face I knew, in whose photographs I could see the Thomas I recognized being exactly himself in what appeared to be a completely different life. He had not hidden Lauren the way some men hide their affairs, behind deleted messages and separate phones and elaborate scheduling. He had kept her in a separate compartment. He had given her his real name, his real face, his real charm. He had simply never mentioned her to me, and apparently never mentioned me to her, and operated on the assumption that the distance between his two lives was sufficient to keep them from touching. Someone had decided that distance was not sufficient. Someone had sent me that photograph. Someone who had been at the wedding, or who had seen the photographs online, or who knew Thomas in a context I was not aware of, had looked at those 47 images and had made a decision that I deserved to know what was in them. I did not know yet who that person was. I would find out. And when I found out, it would change everything I thought I understood about the shape of what Thomas had built. Because the person who sent me that photograph was not a stranger at all. I did not go upstairs that night. I told myself I needed more information before I could have the conversation that was coming, which was true, but I also could not bring myself to lie down next to Thomas in our bed and pretend to sleep while my mind was doing what it was doing. So I stayed downstairs on the couch with my phone in my hand and I kept digging. Lauren's Instagram was a roadmap. Not a complete roadmap, because no one puts their entire life on Instagram, no matter how public their account is, but enough of one that I could begin to assemble a timeline that made sense in the way that terrible things sometimes make sense once you have enough information to see their shape. She was 33 years old. She worked as a marketing coordinator for a tech startup in Tempe. She had a small dog named Biscuit. She ran half marathons. She had close friends who appeared regularly in her photographs, always the same 4 women, always tagged with affectionate captions about girls' nights and brunch and birthday celebrations. She looked, from what I could see of her life in squares and captions, like a completely normal woman living a completely normal life who had fallen in love with a man she believed was available to love her back. I went back to the beginning of her account, 3 years ago. That was when Thomas first appeared, in a photograph taken at a restaurant in downtown Phoenix. Lauren smiling at the camera while a man I recognized sat across from her at a table, his face partially turned away but unmistakable. The caption said, "New favorite spot, 3 years, not a brief affair, not a mistake that had gotten out of hand." 3 years of a relationship that had progressed in a way that relationships progress, when both people are invested, through dating and commitment and engagement and marriage, through all the ordinary milestones that people celebrate when they believe they are building something real together. I did the math in my head. 3 years ago was 2 years into our marriage. Lily had been 5 years old. We had just finished remodeling the kitchen. A project that had taken 9 months and had required both of us to make dozens of decisions about cabinets and countertops and tile and lighting, the kind of mundane but intimate process that couples go through when they are building a home together. I remembered that year as a good year, a year when Thomas and I had felt particularly solid, when Lily was old enough to be interesting and young enough to still need us in obvious ways, when work was going well for both of us, when we had looked at each other across the new kitchen island and said we did it. That was the same year Thomas had started seeing Lauren. I kept scrolling. The photographs told their own story. Casual dates became regular dates, became couple photographs, became trips together, became holidays together, became a photograph of Lauren's hand with a ring on it, captioned with the words he asked, and I said yes, and a date 9 months ago. 9 months ago was February. I scrolled back through my own memory, February. We had gone to San Diego for Lily's spring break. We had stayed in a hotel on Coronado Island and spent 3 days at the beach and the zoo and a children's museum that Lily had loved. Thomas had been fully present the entire trip, attentive and affectionate, the way he always was on family vacations, putting his phone away except to take photographs of Lily and me, playing in the ocean, building sandcastles, eating ice cream on the pier. I had fallen asleep on his shoulder on the plane ride home thinking about how lucky I was. That same month, he had proposed to Lauren. I put my phone face down on the coffee table. I went to the kitchen and poured myself a glass of water and drank it standing at the sink, looking out at the backyard, at the pool that Lily loved, and the lemon tree that we had planted the year we bought the house, and the patio furniture we had picked out together at a store in Tempe. And I thought about all the ways a life can be simultaneously completely real and completely false. Then I picked up my phone again, and I went back to the anonymous account that had sent me the photograph. I clicked on it. The profile was empty as I had seen earlier. No posts, no followers, no following. The kind of account that had been created specifically to send me one message and then abandoned. But Instagram allows you to see when an account was created, and when I checked, this account had been created the same day I received the message. Tuesday, November 12th. Yesterday, someone had created an account specifically to send me that photograph. Someone who had access to the wedding photographs, or who had been at the wedding, and who had waited 3 weeks after the ceremony to contact me. Someone who wanted me to know, but who did not want me to know who they were. I thought about who that could be. A guest at the wedding who knew Thomas was married. One of Lauren's friends who had discovered the truth. Someone from Thomas's work who had somehow learned about both lives. A family member. A stranger with a conscience. I was wrong about all of it. At 2:15 in the morning, sitting alone on my couch with my laptop open beside me, because I had moved from my phone to a larger screen, I found the answer in a place I had not thought to look. I had been scrolling through the comments on Lauren's wedding photographs, reading the congratulations from friends and family, when I noticed something. Most of the comments were from accounts I did not recognize, people who were clearly part of Lauren's life. But there was one account that commented on almost every photograph, always with the same kinds of messages. So happy for you. You look stunning. This is everything. The account was named K. Miss Martin AZ, and the profile picture was a woman in her early 30s with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail, wearing sunglasses and a baseball cap, the kind of photograph that is designed to be unidentifiable while still being human enough to avoid looking suspicious. I clicked on the account. It was public. The account had 73 posts, all of them generic lifestyle content, coffee cups and sunsets and motivational quotes, the kind of account that could belong to anyone, and therefore belongs to no one. But when I looked at the date the account was created, it was 11 months ago. Right around the time Thomas and Lauren got engaged. I went back to Lauren's wedding photographs. I scrolled through every comment K. Miss Martin AZ had left. They were warm but not intimate, supportive but not personal. The comments of someone who was present but not close. And then I found one photograph, number 34 in the gallery, that showed the guests during the reception, dancing and laughing, and in the background, slightly out of focus but visible if you were looking for them, was a woman in a dark blue dress standing alone near the edge of the frame watching the crowd. The woman was wearing sunglasses, even though the reception was in the evening. Her hair was pulled back. She was standing in a way that suggested she did not want to be noticed. I enlarged the photograph as much as Instagram would allow. The quality degraded, but not enough to make the woman unidentifiable. The woman was me. I sat there for a long time looking at that photograph. Looking at myself standing at my husband's wedding to another woman, in a blue dress I had never owned, in a photograph I had never posed for. In a moment that had never happened, someone had photoshopped me into the wedding. The person who had sent me the photograph was someone who had access to photographs of me, who had access to the wedding photographs, who had the skill to edit me into one of them convincingly enough that I had not noticed on first glance, and who had the motive to create a fake Instagram account, insert themselves into Lauren's comments as a fake guest named Camus Martin AZ, and then send me the original unedited photograph to let me know what Thomas had done. I was looking at this wrong. This was not someone trying to help me. This was someone trying to destroy Thomas. And I needed to figure out who before I said a single word to anyone. The next morning I called in sick to work. I worked as a graphic designer for a marketing agency in Scottsdale, the kind of job that allows for remote work and flexible hours as long as deadlines are met, which meant that calling in sick was unusual but not suspicious. I told my supervisor I had a migraine, which was not entirely untrue given that I had not slept and my head felt like something was pressing against my skull from the inside. Thomas left for work at 7:30. Lily left for school at 8. The house was mine. I spent the morning doing what I do professionally, which is reverse engineering visual content to figure out how it was made. I pulled up the photograph of me in the blue dress standing at the edge of the reception. I examined it pixel by pixel, and within an hour I had found what I was looking for. The composite was good, but not perfect. The lighting on my face did not quite match the lighting in the rest of the photograph. The shadows fell at a slightly different angle. The edge of my arm where it met the background had the faint halo effect that happens when you cut someone out of one image and paste them into another without perfect precision. This was the work of someone who knew how to use Photoshop, but who was not a professional, someone who had the skills to create something convincing at first glance but not at second or third examination. The photograph of me had been taken from my own Instagram account. I found it 3 years ago, a photograph from a work event where I had worn a dark blue dress and stood in a similar pose. Someone had taken that photograph, isolated me from the background, edited me into the wedding photograph, and uploaded it to a fake account pretending to be a wedding guest. Why? I spent the rest of the morning trying to answer that question. I went through every person I could think of who might have a reason to want to expose Thomas. A coworker with a grudge, a client he had wronged, an ex-girlfriend. Someone from his past I did not know about. I made a list in a notebook, which I then closed and hid in a drawer because I did not want to leave evidence of what I was thinking in a place where someone could find it. Then at 1:15 in the afternoon my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost did not answer because I do not normally answer calls from numbers I do not recognize, but something made me pick it up. The voice on the other end was female, young, nervous. She said, "Is this Claire?" I said yes. She said, "My name is Lauren." I did not say anything. My mind was doing several things at once, calculating how Lauren had gotten my number, why she was calling, what she knew, whether Thomas was aware this call was happening. I waited. She said, "I think we need to talk. I think someone is lying to both of us." I said, "Where are you?" She gave me an address, a coffee shop in Central Phoenix. She said, "Can you meet me there in an hour?" I said yes. I hung up. I sat in my kitchen and I thought about what had just happened. Lauren knew about me. She had my number. She wanted to meet. Which meant that someone had told her the same thing they had told me, through the same mechanism, and we had both spent the past 24 hours discovering the same things about the same man from opposite directions. I drove to the coffee shop. I arrived 10 minutes early and sat in my car in the parking lot watching the entrance. At exactly 2:15, a woman I recognized from 47 Instagram photographs walked through the door. She was wearing jeans and a sweater and sunglasses even though it was overcast. She looked around the coffee shop nervously and then sat down at a table near the back. I got out of my car. I walked inside. I walked to her table. I said, "Lauren." She looked up and her face did something complicated. I think she had been preparing herself for this moment the same way I had been preparing for it. And I think both of us had underestimated how strange it would feel to sit across from the other woman who had married the same man. I sat down. For a moment, neither of us said anything. Then she said, "Did you get a photograph too?" I said yes. She said, "Me too." She said, "I got it yesterday morning." She said it was sent from an account I did not recognize. She said I did not believe it at first. I said, "When did you believe it?" She said when I called the number on his business card and a woman answered and said, "You have reached Thomas and Claire Coleman." And I realized that Thomas Coleman was the same Thomas I had married 3 weeks ago, except his last name was not Coleman. It was Reynolds, which is what he told me, and what is on our marriage license. Coleman was my maiden name. Reynolds was Thomas's real last name. He had used his real name with Lauren and my maiden name with me. which was the kind of detail that suggested a level of planning that made my stomach hurt. I said, "You married him under the name Thomas Reynolds." She said yes. I said I married him under the name Thomas Coleman. We both sat with that for a moment. Then she said, "I think someone wants us to know about each other. I think someone wants to destroy him." I said, "I think you are right." She said, "Do you know who?" I said, "No, but I think we need to figure it out before we do anything else, because whoever is doing this is controlling the information we have and the order we are learning it in, and I do not like being controlled." Lauren looked at me for a long time. Then she said, "I am so sorry for all of it. I did not know." I said, "I know. I believe you." She started to cry. Not dramatically, but quietly, the way people cry when they have been holding something in for a long time and it has finally found an opening. I did not reach across the table and comfort her, because we were not friends, and I was not ready to treat this situation as though we were bonded by shared victimhood. But I waited while she composed herself, and I did not look away, and I did not make her feel worse than she already felt. When she stopped crying, she said, "What do we do now?" I said, "We figure out who sent those photographs. And then we figure out what Thomas actually is." Over the next week, Lauren and I spoke 3 more times, once on the phone, once at her apartment, once at my house when Thomas was out of town and Lily was at a sleepover. We were not friends and we did not pretend to be. We were 2 women who had been deceived by the same man and who needed to work together to understand the full scope of what had been done to us. What we discovered was worse than either of us had expected. Thomas had not just married us both. He had structured his entire life to maintain both marriages simultaneously, using a system that was so methodical and so sustained that it had required years of planning. He had 2 phones, which we knew. He had 2 sets of identification, which we discovered when Lauren found a second driver's license in a jacket pocket with the name Thomas Coleman on it. He had 2 separate financial lives, which I uncovered when I pulled credit reports using my access to his social security number and found accounts I had never seen. He traveled frequently for work, or that was what he told both of us. But when we compared our calendars, we realized that the trips he took were almost never real. When he told me he was in Las Vegas for a conference, he was with Lauren. When he told Lauren he was in San Diego meeting a client, he was with me. The trips that were real were the ones he took alone, and those, we realized, were the only times he was actually resting, the only times he was not performing one version of himself or the other. The man I had been married to for 11 years was not a person. He was a construction, a performance. 2 performances running simultaneously, neither one of them real, but we still did not know who had sent the photographs. The answer came from the most unexpected place. I was sitting in Lauren's apartment going through a box of papers she had found in the closet. Thomas kept his things in at her place when I found a letter. It was handwritten, dated 3 years ago, shortly after Thomas and Lauren had started seeing each other. It was addressed to Thomas, but it had never been sent. The handwriting was shaky, the kind of writing produced by someone who was either very old or very unwell. The letter was from Thomas's mother. It said, "I know what you are doing. I know about both of them. I knew about your father too. This is who we are. But it will catch up with you the way it caught up with him. And when it does, you will lose everything, the way he did, and you will deserve it." Lauren and I sat in her apartment, and we read that letter 3 times. Then I said his mother knew. Lauren said his mother knew the whole time. I said his mother is the one who sent the photographs. Lauren said his mother is dying. I looked at her. She said he told me. 6 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. Late stage. He said he needed to go to Flagstaff to see her, and I offered to come with him, and he said no, it was too hard, he needed to do it alone. I said he told me the same thing, except he said it was his father who was dying, and the city was Tucson. We both sat there for a long time. Then Lauren said, "We need to find her." It took 2 days. Thomas's mother's name was Diane Reynolds, and she lived in a care facility in Prescott, Arizona, 90 minutes north of Phoenix. I called the facility and confirmed she was a resident. I did not say who I was or why I was calling. I just needed to know she was real. Lauren and I drove to Prescott together. We did not tell Thomas. We did not tell anyone. We just got in my car on a Saturday morning and drove north through the desert, and neither of us said very much, because there was not very much to say that we had not already said to each other over the past 2 weeks. The care facility was small and quiet, the kind of place where people go when they are at the end and need more than a family can provide. We told the woman at the front desk we were there to see Diane Reynolds, and she asked if we were family, and I said yes without hesitation, because I did not think the truth would get us through the door. Diane was in a room on the 2nd floor. She was sitting in a chair by the window looking out at the mountains. She was very thin and very pale, And she looked at us when we came in with an expression that suggested she had been expecting us or someone like us eventually. I said, "My name is Claire. This is Lauren. We are both married to your son." Deanne looked at us for a long time. Then she said, "I know. I sent you the photographs." Lauren said, "Why?" Deanne said, "Because someone needed to tell you. Because Thomas will never tell you himself. Because I did not tell the women my husband did this to, and I have carried that for 40 years, and I am dying, and I wanted to do one thing right before I go." I said, "Your husband did this too." She said, "Yes, for 30 years. I found out too late to leave. I was 53 years old with no career and no money of my own and nowhere to go, and he told me if I left I would have nothing, so I stayed. And I watched him move between his lives, and I watched my son grow up, watching him, and I knew." She said, "I knew Thomas would do the same thing, because this is what the men in his family do. His grandfather did it, his father did it, and Thomas does it. And I sent you those photographs, because you deserve to know while you still have time to leave." I said, "Did you edit me into the wedding photograph?" She said, "No, I sent you the real photograph. Someone else edited you into a different one. That was not me." I said, "Then who?" She said, "I do not know. But someone else knows what Thomas is, and they are playing a game with all of you." Lauren and I left the facility an hour later. We sat in my car in the parking lot, and we did not start the engine for a long time. Then I said, "We need to go home. We need to confront him. Together, at the same time, so he cannot lie to one of us about the other." Lauren said, "When I said tonight." We drove back to Phoenix. We did not speak for most of the drive. When we reached the city, Lauren said, "Drop me at my apartment. I need to get something, and then meet me at your house at 7. I said, "What are you getting?" She said, "Our marriage license. I want him to see both of them at the same time." At 7 o'clock, Lauren knocked on my door. Thomas was upstairs helping Lily with her homework. I opened the door and let Lauren in, and I called up the stairs and said, "Thomas, can you come down here, please? There is someone I need you to meet." I heard his footsteps on the stairs. I heard him reach the landing. I heard him turn the corner into the hallway. And I watched his face as he saw both of us standing there, side by side, in the entryway of the house he shared with me, looking at him with the same expression. He stopped walking. His face did not collapse the way I expected it to. It went completely blank, the way a screen goes blank when the power is cut. And for just a moment, I saw the thing that had been underneath the performance the entire time, which was nothing at all. I said, "We know everything, Thomas. Both of us. All of it. And you are going to sit down and you are going to tell us the truth, or we are going to take what we know to every single person in your life and you will have nothing left." He sat down, and then he told us. He told us about his father. He told us about watching his father maintain 2 separate families in 2 separate cities for 30 years, moving between them with a precision that Thomas had studied the way a child studies the behavior of a parent they want to understand. He told us that he had always known he would do the same thing, not because he wanted to hurt anyone, but because he believed he was capable of loving 2 people at once and saw no reason why that should require choosing. He told us that he had never intended for us to meet, that he had built his entire life to prevent it, and that someone had sabotaged that and he did not know who. I said, "Your mother sent us the photographs." He said, "I know. She told me she was going to before she got too sick to use a phone. I thought I had convinced her not to." Lauren said, "Who edited Claire into the wedding photograph?" He said, "I do not know." I said, "I do not believe you." He said, "I am telling the truth. Someone knows what I am and they are trying to destroy me and I do not know who." Lauren and I looked at each other. Then I said, "It does not matter, because we are done, both of us. And you are going to cooperate with both of our divorce filings, and you are going to split everything, fairly, and you are going to disappear from both of our lives except for the minimum contact required to co-parent Lily. And if you do not, we will make sure every client, every colleague, every person in your professional and personal life knows exactly what you are." Thomas looked at me for a long time. Then he said, "Okay." He moved out that night. He stayed in a hotel. Lauren filed for divorce 3 days later. I filed a week after that. The proceedings were faster than I expected, because neither of us wanted anything except to be free of him, and he cooperated because the alternative was public exposure in a profession that depends entirely on reputation. We never found out who edited me into the photograph. We never found out who created the fake Instagram account pretending to be a wedding guest. We never found out who knew what Thomas was before his mother told us, and who wanted us to know badly enough to insert themselves into the story, in a way that still, even now, feels like a presence I cannot identify. But I do not need to know. Because what I learned from this is that the person you think you know best is sometimes the person you do not know at all. That a man can look at you with complete presence and warmth and love and mean every bit of it and still be someone else entirely when you are not in the room. That some people are not built the way the rest of us are built, and no amount of trying to understand them will make them make sense. If you are still here, if you listen to all of this, I want you to ask yourself something. If a stranger sent you a photograph tomorrow that changed everything you thought you knew about your life, would you want to see it? Or would you rather not know? Leave me a comment, tell me. Because I have thought about that question every day since this happened, and I still do not have an answer that feels right. If you are new here, subscribe and turn on notifications. There are more stories coming, and every single one of them is about the moment someone finally stopped, pretending they did not see what was right in front of them. I will see you in the next one.